two completely different stories? Well, today
तो
we're
फिर
looking
लगा,
at the
तो
mouse.
फिर हमें
We're
हम जब
exploring how
जाए ना
this one
सफर में
creature can
बोटा
connect a
एआई
story
हम
about
बताते नहीं बात
profound
करो तुम
historical
मेरे बात
trauma
करो तब फिर
to
बोला
one
कभी
about,
बात
well,
अगर मैं
crippling
कभी तो बोला
social
कभी नहीं
anxiety.
तो चाहिए
Okay, so let's just lay it all out there. How can the
सुनाओ
same word, mouse, possibly bridge the gap between something as immense as the
तो जब
Holocaust
तक अब
and
तक
the
वो
kind of
बिठवानी चलेगी
frantic
कि
internal
काम
panic
करते
you feel when you're just horribly embarrassed in public? It seems impossible, right? Well, that's exactly what we're going to unpack. And really, the contrast could not be more extreme. On one hand, you have Maus, that's German for mouse, Art Spiegelman's Pulitzer-winning graphic novel about the Holocaust. And on the other, you have Saki's short story, The
मम्मी
Mouse, which is all about
खा
one
कह
man's
दे
mortifying
बोलिस
moment
ना
on a
ध्यान से
train.
बात ध्यान
I
से
mean, the stakes are just worlds
धन्यवाद
apart, but the symbol is exactly the same. So here's our
साधना
roadmap for
पटेल
today.
थोड़ी सी
First, we're diving deep into
वाह
Mouse and
यार ये
how it
नानी
portrays
पसंद
this incredible history. Then we'll do a complete 180 and get into Saki's social satire. After that, we'll put the two side by side to really compare what's going on with the symbolism. And we'll
वो
wrap
इतना
up by
नानी
looking
पानी
at
तेरा
why
से
metaphors like
नॉर्मल
this
था
are just so darn powerful.
इसम हगिस
All
नहीं
right,
सकना का हगिस
first up,
जैसे
Art
नगर जैसे
Spiegelman's
चिपके थे ऐसे लगा
masterpiece, Mouse.
कैसे करे
And you have to understand,
तो
this
मतलब
isn't
जन
just a
मेरे को
book. It's a
लंच
landmark piece of
लेफ्टर 10
art
का
that
है
looks at
ये 24
memory,
का है
at
150 का
trauma,
किलो है
and
ले
at history in a way that had never been done before.
पूरा दिन
So,
सब
for
खर्चा है
anyone who's not familiar with it, Mouse is kind of a biography, a memoir, and a history lesson all rolled into one powerful package.
हाँ
It's
तो फिर
basically Art
साथ बातें
Spiegelman
सीखने
trying to
मिलेगी
understand his
ले
father,
लेंगे
Vladek, by
ठीक है
recording his story of surviving the
मेरे को जो मेरा
Holocaust.
करेंगे
And
मेरे
he does
फ्राई
it using this totally
करेंगे
unique
कि
and
हाफ
controversial
मेरे को
artistic
हटा दिन
style.
दिनों पहले
And the
दे दिखाई
structure
दी
of the book is
हाँ
absolutely key to
जीते
its
जीते
power.
बर्बाद
It's
कर
not
दिया
just
तो
one
साथी के
story,
भरोसे
it
ठीक
weaves
और
back
अच्छा
and
बात
forth between
जी
two
तो किसमिस के
timelines.
दो अकेल को
You have
किसमिस दो
Vladek's
को
harrowing past in
किसमिस को
Europe during
ग्राइंड
the
करो
war,
ढाले
and then you have
आदमी
the
दिन
present
अल्लाह
in the
कसम
late
ये बात नहीं दी कि
70s,
ढाले
where art is trying to get this
इधर
story out of his
मिक्सर
father, and
दिला
they're
छिन तो जानी
grappling with a
किसमिस को
really
डायगोड़ा नहीं
difficult, strange relationship. This back and forth is what gives the book its
नारियल दो
incredible
नहीं जो
depth.
नारियल लो दे दे
So, the big question, why animals? And more specifically, why mice? Well, this quote
और
from Hitler, which Spiegelman
गरम
uses
करके
right
बताया
at the
तब
beginning
भून
of
के
the
फिर
book, tells you everything you need to know. The
खट्टा
entire
ही
metaphor is a direct confrontation with the Nazi ideology of dehumanization. Spiegelman is literally taking their own
मगर वो
hateful
अपना दिमाग को
propaganda
अलग
and
बार करने
turning it
के
right back on them.
बर्बाद कर लो
Here's
अब
how he did
वो
it.
क्या तरीका
He
से
assigned different animals to different groups.
ग्लास उठ कर डाले
Jewish
हल्का
people
फुल्का
are
फ्रूट
drawn
डाले
as
आँख
mice,
आँख
which
बंद
is a
करे एकदम
direct reference to
ये
how they were
पहली भी
portrayed in
तो
Nazi
3 दिन बोले बाप
propaganda.
भोग नहीं लग
The
बेचारा
Germans
ड्राई
then are their
फ्रूट्स
natural
पूरा एनर्जी
predators, cats.
अब्बा का खिलवाए भी
Poles are shown as pigs,
अभी
and
रात में खिला
Americans
सोता
as
दो
big, friendly dogs. By making these racial categories so stark and frankly absurd, Spiegelman exposes just how
ए
ridiculous the
तभी उड़ा
whole
तभी
idea
की
is in the first place.
मी रोस्ट
And this
इंदे
makes it
फ्राई दे करें
crystal clear that Mouse is not some simple fable with a
नहीं
neat
नहीं
little moral. No,
गरम
it
करें
is
नहीं गरम
wrestling with huge, heavy themes. Systemic racism, of course, but also
मी
things like
सोचने की
generational
कि
trauma.
इन्हीं
This
हेवेली
idea that the
इलात
children
मिले
of
खिलात
survivors
मिले
can
तो नहीं
actually inherit
ये
the
खिलत बुलवा
emotional
लगी तो
weight
फटे
of
खेल
those
रहे
events. It deals with survivor's guilt
नहीं क्या
and the heartbreaking gaps
अब
in
कोई दे दफे
history,
नु दे दिया
symbolized by the story of Art's mother, Anya,
जखना
whose
दिनों नहीं
own
होता है
diaries
उखड़ी
from that
उखना नहीं
time were
लागली
destroyed.
गरम हमार बात फिर
Okay,
फटे उठली
deep breath. We're about to pivot from a world
ये बात तो
historical
की हेल्प
tragedy
नहीं है
to a very, very small crisis of social anxiety. We're jumping into Saki's short story, The Mouse. And here, the stakes are completely different. The predator isn't a fascist regime, it's the simple fear of what other people might think of you. So let me introduce you to Theodoric. He is our main character, and to put it lightly, he's been sheltered. His mother made sure he was protected from, well, from pretty much all of
ये करो
life.
मोबाइल डाल
He's incredibly
चले
anxious,
जा जा जा
gets
जा वीडियो
flustered at the drop of a hat, and he is
अपलोड ये करो
obsessed with how he
रिकॉर्ड कर
appears to others. He is the absolute perfect character to be completely undone by a
वो
tiny
शुरू तो
inconvenience.
फिर
And here is that tiny
बर्थडे नहीं करे
inconvenience,
ये
which,
करा
in
साफा
his
व्यू
head, escalates into a
नो
full-blown
व्यू
catastrophe.
बरकाला वीडियो
A
देखो ना
mouse
नो
crawls
व्यू
up his pant
समझा
leg.
सगला
A
देखता
simple
देखता
problem.
चिली एकटा सोटा
But for
साथ नो व्यू
Theodoric, no way.
अब ले जरा
His
डाल दो
paralyzing fear of being
उधर
judged
फिर
by the woman
लागले
sitting
फिर
across
तेरी
from
स्टाइल
him
ले ले
leads him to this ridiculous
लागले ढाल
plan involving a rug for privacy, which of course goes horribly wrong at the
ये ना
worst
बहुत
possible
टेंशन वाला
moment.
चीज छो
And just when Theodoric is at the absolute peak of his shame and mortification, Saki hits us with this incredible punchline. The woman, the one he was so terrified of, the sole witness to his ultimate humiliation, she couldn't see a thing. The entire terrible ordeal was a prison he built for himself, inside his own head.
कहते काम
Okay,
करवाते
so
नहीं
now
जाने
let's bring these two stories back together. Let's really look at what the mouse does in each story. because its function is completely different, and that's what makes this comparison so fascinating. The difference here is just night and day. In mouse, being a mouse is an identity that's forced on you. It's a symbol of victimhood, of external dehumanization by a predatory power. But in Saki's story, the mouse is just a random mouse. It's a catalyst that sets off an internal collapse of dignity, all because Theodoric is terrified of how he's being perceived. To truly get a sense of the stakes in Mouse, all you need to do is listen to Vladic's words. He's describing a world where survival strips everything away: friendship, dignity, humanity itself. It's all put to the test under the most brutal pressure you can imagine. That's the world the Mouse lives in. And that right there is the heart of it. Vladek Spiegelman is in a literal fight for his life against a genocidal regime. Theodoric is fighting a battle that is entirely inside his own anxious mind. Two totally different struggles, one shared symbol, but they exist in completely separate universes of meaning. So what's the big takeaway here? Why does any of this matter? Well, let's zoom out for a second and just talk about the power of metaphor and why a simple symbol like a mouse can be such an incredibly effective tool for telling a story. At their core, symbols are basically shortcuts. They're a way for our brains to handle huge, complex, sometimes terrifying ideas like genocide or even just social anxiety, and distill them down into a single, concrete image that we can actually connect with on an emotional level. So, depending on the story you're telling, a mouse stops being just a mouse. It can stand in for an entire people being hunted down. It can represent a humanity that is violently taken away from you. But it can also be that small, skittering fear that we all have inside us, that deep, private dread of being seen, of being exposed, of losing our dignity in front of everyone else. And that is the real magic of it. This one symbol, the mouse, becomes a vehicle. It's strong enough to carry the immense weight of one of history's greatest evils, but it's also relatable enough to carry the weight of our own everyday anxieties. It connects the epic to the deeply personal. So I'll leave you with this question to think about. What other simple images do we use to explain our biggest fears? Think about a storm, or a shadow, or a closed door. What are the everyday symbols that tell the story of who we are, where we've been, and what truly scares us?